Hello, 10th grade. This is Mr. Repholtz from Community Christian School, and welcome to our online segment of our class. Not much is going to be changing. You're still going to have the section reviews due as normal. Just write them on the same sheet of paper or a different sheet of paper. Doesn't matter as long as you get them back to me. Please label them clearly. The only difference is we're not going to have any quizzes, and your tests are all going to be open book. That's quite nice. Your current test is scheduled for Friday, but you can do it at any point during this week. Just make sure you get it done. Well, anyways, we're going to finish up our Chapter 15.3 notes. We are almost done Chapter 15, which sets us up for a test over Chapters 14 and 15. Let's get going with this. Bless you. Interactions between organisms. I'm going to move myself here so you can see the notes. The first one is predation, where one species eats the other species, like a lion and a zebra are predator and prey. Competition are between two or more organisms that need the same resource. So let's say there's two different birds. You got some warbler and some sparrow, and they're fighting over a tree that they can use to build a nest. They're competing with one another. Not necessarily eating one another, I hope not, but competing for the same territory. That makes them in competition. You also have this term, it's called a niche. And a niche is a role or a spot of an organism in its environment. What it eats, how it obtains food, how it interacts. And you can have multiple niches even within the same tree. So you can see that tree here. You have three different kinds of warblers, and they're all in different parts of the tree. They all have different spots in their environment, what they eat, how they control the population, etc., etc. And the niche of an organism is very important. And you can see that the warbler over here, the yellow one, feeds on the lower parts of the tree, and so it's going to eat different insects, and it's going to do different things than the other warbler. Now, this is important. This is a vital part of this chapter, that you get this. Organisms not only depend on one another, but they affect one another. So consider the deer and wolf population. The deer population goes way up here. Well, what effect is that going to have on the wolf? Well, the wolf's going to have a lot more to eat, and so their population can increase. And when their population increases, what happens to the deer population? Well, it goes down because deer get eaten. And as the deer goes down, there's less to eat, and so the wolves don't have a lot to eat, and they die off. And you can see how each organism is affecting one another in this kind of circle of life. Now, this isn't Lion King or Disney Plus, but these things definitely affect each other. And we can add a lot of other things in there. We can say maybe the grass population. Well, as the grass population increases, you'd expect the deer population to increase too, because there's more to eat. But if there's a fire and it burns all the grass, you're also going to have a lot of dead deer because they just simply don't have a lot to eat. Flow of energy. Food chain is the simplest path that energy takes through an ecosystem. Food chain of an owl. You got a plant, which goes to the insect, which goes to typically an omnivore, some sort of simple consumer, which goes towards the top of the food chain, the owl in this case. Each trophic level is the level of transfer of energy within an ecosystem. And a heterotroph must consume food from outside of their body. So as I would normally say in class, true or false, you are a heterotroph. And that is a true statement. You have to consume food outside of your body. It would be pretty epic if you could go outside and kind of go like this and start glowing and get energy from the sun. But that's just not something we can do. Autotrophs, on the other hand, they can. They can absorb the sun's energy and convert it into glucose. Herbivores are heterotrophs, so they must eat other things, but they can only eat herbs or green plants. Carnivores can only eat, eat other animals. An example of that would be a wolf, or even any kind of cat. They are carnivores. They like to eat meat. Omnivore can eat just about anything. You are an omnivore. Hopefully you eat lots of a variety of things, such as meats, as well as your vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. Now I'm going to be having you later on this week make a food web. And a food web represents many interconnected food chains, and we're going to look at a food web in just a second. But it is worth mentioning that without detritivores or decomposers that break down organic material and return it to the soil, water, and air, it would be a very different world that we live in. Imagine if you went hunting and, sniped a deer and you couldn't find it again, but the deer died and it never decomposed. It was still there years later. And every organism never decomposed. Well, we would have piles and piles of dead organisms. That would be kind of nasty. Now, the food web you're going to be creating, which I'll explain in more detail in another video, is going to kind of look like this one. You're going to choose any sort of ecosystem, and you're going to see how things affect that ecosystem. So you take a look at the plankton or algae. They're eaten by insects as well as berries, and insects are eaten by minnows, which are eaten by the salmon, which are eaten by the bear. Bears at the top of the food chain. Lion and hawk are two. These are consumers here, but they're at the bottom of the food chain, or close to the bottom of the food chain, the very bottom of the food chain. Things that just get eaten and eat nothing else are along here. And so you can see how each organism affects. Let's take, for instance, the opossum. It's going to eat insects and berries, but it's going to be eaten by the lion. The cow and the deer are going to be eaten by the bobcat, but the bobcat is going to be eaten by the lion. So this is a food web that's pretty easy to read. And last slide, you have the ecological pyramid. I'm going to move myself down here. Ecological pyramid shows how energy flows through an ecosystem. So you can see how in this pyramid here, you're going to have a whole lot of producers that are supporting a smaller number of consumers, primary consumers, an even smaller amount of secondary consumers. And at the top of the food chain, you can see there's not a whole lot of these. So on this example, there's one fox for every about 3,000 grasses. And that makes sense, because at every energy level, you're going to lose some sort of energy. Just like, let's say, imagine you are a mouse. I don't know why, but you're a mouse and you're eating all sorts of random things. You don't really care too much of what you eat. But as you get around, you lose energy. And if you're ever eaten, not everything that you've ever eaten goes towards what eats you. It's only what you have left in your body. But if you ran a mile to the nearest piece of cheese, you would lose a whole bunch of energy and a whole bunch of mass that the consumer that ate you would never really get back. And that's why we take calculations of biomass, the total mass of living organic matter in an ecosystem. And this is very hard to do, but as you can see here, we are going to, whether in this or this, I like this one, pyramid of biomass, it's going to show how many kilograms is in each level of the ecological pyramids. It should look like a pyramid. If it's an upside down pyramid, where there's lots of top consumers and on the bottom there's a little producers, it's not very good for that ecosystem, and the ecosystem is likely to collapse on itself. Well, anyway, that is all. Next time we're going to be going into chapter 15.4 through 15.6, and make sure you do your section reviews 15.3 for homework and get that in. Until next time, I will see you guys later. Stay safe and healthy and away from the pandemic that is the coronavirus. I'm praying for you, and I hope you have a good day.